you, Father.
There is a beast beneath the boards.
Oh, my dearest love.
Who is the beast beneath the boards? Queen Helena's prophetic powers explained. Crystal balls, tea leaves, palm readings. There are 1,000 different mediums through which humans have searched the ether for their own futures in hopes of changing them for the better.
And why is that so, do you think?
It is beyond our understanding.
It would be great if any of those things actually work, but we think that George R.R. Martin has the right idea about prophecies. They are treacherous things and not to be trusted.
You will have a dragon one day.
You'll have to close an eye.
I know it.
Tyrion Lannister calls them a half-trained mule that would kick you in the head when you're not looking. And Archmaester Marwyn calls prophecy a treacherous woman that would bite your prick off at the height of your pleasure.
I did not kill Joffrey, but I wish that I had.
Both of these sayings are true of the nature of prophecies in Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire series, because being able to see the future drives the person who saw the said future insane in most cases. And it appears that our sweet Princess Helaena Targaryen is unfortunately on the same path as so many dreamers before her. But what does her latest prophecy mean? Who is the beast beneath the boards? Let's find out, and spoiler warning, because there will be a lot of those in this video. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you, and let's begin.
Spool of green, spool of black. Dragons of flesh, weaving dragons of thread.
Helaena is the latest in a long line of dragon dreamers. If you thought that being able to ride and control dragons was the only superpower that the Targaryens possessed, then you couldn't be more wrong in your life, because their dreams are arguably stronger than their dragons. Prophecy is a treacherous thing to be sure, but the ones who are blessed to behold them are special nonetheless. And if one can learn how to accurately interpret the signs and portents they witness, then they become akin to God in any land. The first Targaryen known to have expressed this trait in the annals of Westerosi history was Daenerys the Dreamer, the daughter of Lord Aenar Targaryen, who would later be called Aenar the Exiled by historians and singers. Daenerys dreamed a dream that would prove to be the undoing of the tyrannical dragon lords of old Valyria. She saw the doom in her visions. Her father Aenar trusted in his maiden daughter's words and sold all his holdings in Valyria and the lands of the Long Summer, moving his family, slaves, and dragons to Dragonstone. 12 years later, his caution would prove to be the wisest decision of his entire life, as Valyria was brought down by its 14 flames and the greatest city in the world was reduced to fire, blood, and ash in a single day. Because of Daenerys' prophetic dream, the Targaryens became the only dragon lords to survive the doom and now held a practical monopoly on dragons anywhere in the world. Though there was another dragon lord who survived the doom, a man called Arion. He would soon disappear in his homeland as well. Arion turned up at Qohor after the doom fell on Valyria, decided that he was going to restore it to its full glory. He declared himself the first emperor of Valyria, for Valyria had been a freehold, and mounted his dragon to reclaim his empire alongside 30,000 men. Neither Arion nor his army were ever seen again, and that has been the fate of nearly every person who has visited those doomed shores thereafter. Daenerys married her brother Gaemon and put down all her visions in a book called Signs and Portents, which is highly sought after by the sorcerers and dark arts practitioners of the main timeline, such as Marwyn the Mage. It is through her line that Aegon the Conqueror and the entire Targaryen dynasty was propagated, so naturally her prophetic abilities were passed down to future generations. It is said that in Valyria, dragon riders were rare, but dragon dreamers were rarer, so any child born with a dragon dreams was considered to be special. George R.R. Martin has recently revealed that Aegon the Conqueror himself was a dragon dreamer, and his conquest of the Seven Kingdoms was based on a dream.
But ambition alone is not what drove him to conquest. It was a dream.
Though the exact content of Aegon's dreams were not revealed by Martin himself, House of the Dragon tells us that Aegon essentially dreamed of the long night we saw unfold in Game of Thrones. While it is possible that this was the crux of his dragon dream in Martin's books as well, since we do not know the way those end, we cannot be sure. It is possible that Aegon's dream had the same general outline but has details that House of the Dragon simply cannot incorporate into their story. So you can see how having prophetic dreams can have a great effect in the grand scheme of things, but in the here and now of it, it causes immense pain and destruction 9 times out of 10. Interpreting them is as easy as looking for a needle in a haystack made of needles, and also if those needles were constantly pricking you all over your body. Many a Targaryen has lost their lives, or worse, their sanity, to pursuing prophecies too diligently, and their kingdoms paid for it with fire and blood, especially after the dragons were gone from the world. Now that you know these dreams run in the family and have done so for multiple generations, let's look at Princess Helena's prophetic ramblings, including her latest.
Dragons of flesh, weaving dragons of thread.
Helaena the Dreamer, how she foreshadows important events in House of the Dragon. House of the Dragon has given us not one, but 2 dragon dreamers who were not so in the books. The first is Viserys Targaryen, who only had one dragon dream in his entire life, but he got so fixated with it that it ruined his family. Viserys' dream that his son would be born wearing a crown, and upon his birth the dragons shall roar as one in celebration, turns out to be his worst nightmare. His wife Aemma dies in childbed, and his son Balon dies the next day. The dragons do roar as one, but it is at each other that they spit their flames, not their joint enemies. Viserys' decision to marry Alicent Hightower can be seen as the true beginning of the Dance of the Dragons, thus fulfilling the prophetic dream he had in the worst way imaginable.
Valyria, Aegon foresaw the end of the world of men. It is to begin with a terrible winter.
Princess Helaena is different though. She seems to be a proper dragon dreamer, complete with random prophetic ramblings and a simple disposition. Oracles of any fate were known to be frail creatures, as the gift of prophecy was a heavy burden as well. And while Helaena was known to be somewhat simple-minded in Fire and Blood as well, she did not exhibit any of the traits that her HBO counterpart does. And if she did, they've been omitted from Archmaester Gildane's histories, which makes no mention of any magic at all. Helaena Targaryen seems different from the get-go. Her brothers Aegon and Aemond are fiery and martial, and all the things that young princes are known to be. Helaena is a sweet, quiet, if somewhat aloof child who loves bugs. She is handling a millipede when her mother Alicent is visiting with her and seems more interested in its physiology than her mother's presence. Helaena is absently listing off details about the millipede's features when Aemond walks in and everything changes. She looks up at him and with one glance knows he's been trying to claim one of the rider-bonded dragons from the dragon pit. You could say this isn't proof of anything prophetic because Aemond came in with ash on his face, being hurried in by a Kingsguard, and the dragon he tried to claim was Helena's own Dreamfire. But what she says next is what's interesting.
You will have a dragon one day.
You'll have to close an eye.
After observing that the millipede's last ring has no legs at all, she says he'll have to close an eye, in response to Alicent telling Aemond he will have a dragon of his own one day. Sure enough, Aemond has to close an eye permanently to gain Vhagar in the very next episode. Helaena seems to have known what her brother was up to and what he was going to be doing even before he does it, which is a clear sign that she has been gifted with the power of dragon dreams. After Aemond claims Vhagar, he gets into a fight with his nephews and his nieces, during which Luke slashes his left eye so badly he loses it permanently. Helaena saying that the last leg has no rings at all has been interpreted many different ways by many different sources. But we are not going to get into that. Instead, we'll point you to the next very obvious prophecy she makes, which is the Dance of the Dragons itself. In episode 7's opening stages, you can see Helaena crouching near a seashell and trying to capture a spider as she keeps repeating these words. Hand turns loom, spool of green, spool of black, dragons of flesh, weaving dragons of thread. This is a very clear prophecy about the upcoming civil war and its instigator. The hand that turns the loom is Otto Hightower. He not only urged Viserys to break traditional and go against the precedent set at the Great Council of 101 AC, he also forced his daughter Alicent to basically seduce the king. Both of those actions have led to such dire circumstances that war is now inevitable. The spool of green refers to Alicent and the Hightowers, and the spool of black refers to Rhaenyra and her supporters. The last sentence is just a phrase that dramatizes the fact that they will be going to war with each other. Dragons of flesh weave dragons of threat as war banners to call their supporters to their side. These are two prophecies that will come true in their entirety, so let's turn to the third big prophecy that Helaena drops in the show. During the dinner party organized by Viserys to reconcile his families, Prince Jacaerys Velaryon makes a toast to his uncles after Prince Aegon cries to his proposition his newly betrothed, the Lady Baela Targaryen. Jace is clearly trying to hold his anger in when he says that he has fond memories of their shared youth. So much so that Aemond rises in anticipation of violence. But after Jace manages to gracefully end his toast and compel Aegon to respond to it as well, everyone gets back into their seats, which is when Helaena mutters under her breath, "Beware the beast beneath the boards." She then toasts Baela and Rhaena and goes off to dance with Jace, leaving all of us wondering just who this beast and these boards are. There are multiple candidates, so let's start with the most likely one. When Jace stood up in frustration, so did Aemond One Eye, who was expecting a confrontation, as we've noted already. Aemond told his mother in episode 7 that he thinks losing an eye and gaining Vhagar was a fair exchange, but those of us who have read Fire and Blood know that he never truly looked at things that way.
Beware the beast beneath the boards.
When the Civil War erupts, both blacks and greens begin competing for the loyalty of the vassals of the realm. Rhaenyra puts both her children to work, sending Jace and Luke to multiple great lords in an attempt to secure their fealty for her. Though she gives Luke the easier mission on account of his age, she would come to rue her decision dearly when her son would be met by his uncle and his dragon at Storm's End. During the interactions that followed, old wounds were laid open and fresh ones acquired, thanks to Lord Baratheon's sharp-tongued daughter Maurice. Uncle and nephew were barred from coming to arms in the keep of the Storm Kings of old. But once they departed, they were no longer under Lord Baratheon's protection, and it was a stormy night, like the one which earned Duran God's Grief seat its name. During the course of the events of that night, Aemond would exact the price he deemed worthy from his nephew Lucerys, was taking away his eye and thus doomed the Seven Kingdoms to war. We've already said too much about what will happen, so this is where we will stop. But most people consider this to be the beast beneath the boards that Helaena is asking Jace to beware of, and it certainly holds a lot of merit once you realize that this war is inevitable and Aemond is going to be one of its most eager participants. But there are other candidates as well, and they too are not without merit. Mysaria, the White Worm, and Larys, the Clubfoot, come to mind when you think of a beast beneath the boards, simply because both of them are spy masters. Mysaria's nickname should make it clear enough that her informants, or her worms, are the beasts Helaena is referring to. And we do know that her reach goes far and wide, even within Queen Alicent's own household. Mysaria is going to be involved in several instances of villainy against the Greens in the course of the dance, particularly Helaena herself, who will end up losing everything she holds dear to the White Worm of King's Landing after a fashion. Larys Strong might seem like an odd choice, but given his actions against his own family, we think it's acceptable to classify him as a beast. Well, that and his use of bug-based motives. Larys's walking cane is adorned by a firefly. His agents wear what looks like a golden flea brooch on their cloaks, and we do know that he is more than intimate with a Red Keep secret and is capable of great evils for the good of the realm. He is directly involved in Rhaenyra's downfall and implied to be involved in the madness that unfolds in the city of King's Landing during what is known as the Moon of the Three Kings. Larys Strong carefully moves his pieces into position even before the war begins, and is literally the very reason that King Aegon manages to achieve his desired result to the war. But the Clubfoot makes it very evident very quickly that his true loyalties always laid with himself. He is a threat to literally everyone in that room and easily qualifies as a beast beneath the boards. Both spy masters also inevitably fit the beneath the boards quota of the prophecy because the secret passageways of the Red Keep are not entirely made out of stone. Many of them are made out of timber and earth, and it's just easy to assume that it is one of these boards that their agents will use to do something to someone important. If we are to give you our objective opinion, then we'd say that Helaena is probably talking about Mysaria here, because later on in the series, the White Worm will employ a certain rat catcher who knows the secret passages of the Red Keep, as well as Maegor himself, to renew the blood cycle of vengeance that Aemond established established earlier. It can also be Larys Strong because his use of the secret passageways of King's Landing will lead to one of its darkest hours and ensure that the Clubfoot is the one climbing the ladder of chaos that Littlefinger so loves. But we think that this warning is for someone else. All of us are collectively ignoring the other party in this conversation, and our subjective opinion is that Helena's warning is for Jace, because while it is true that all the parties we've mentioned above are prime candidates for being the beast beneath the boards, there is a certain instance that proves far more fatal to the Prince of Dragonstone's life, and it involves boards for a certainty, and a beast after a fashion. When the Dance of the Dragons transitioned from petitions and summons to steel and fire, Prince Jacaerys Velaryon comes into his own as a man. He bestowed the office of Hand of the Queen to his grandfather, Corlys Velaryon, and set about spearheading the Black's assault plans, being cautioned and advised by the Sea Snake as well as his stepfather Daemon Targaryen. It would be the latter man's demons that would end up sealing the fate of the young prince. With the support of House Velaryon, Rhaenyra had full control of the sea at the start of the war, and trade in King's Landing was being decimated as a result. So Otto Hightower decided to petition the Triarchy for assistance, and after months of bickering and deliberations, they agreed to join Aegon's cause. Under the leadership of Admiral General Sharako Lohar, 90 warships swept from the Stepstones for the Gullet and took the Velaryon ships unawares at the crack of dawn. Prince Jacaerys, ever the fiery warrior, was the first to arrive on his dragon Vermax. He managed to set many of the Triarchy's ships on fire, but these men had fought Daemon in the Stepstones, and Caraxes was stronger and far more experienced than Vermax. The Triarchy's soldiers were prepared for an all-out war with dragons, and that is perhaps where this beast comes in. Cast your minds back to Season 8 of Game of Thrones. What killed Rhaegal and where? And think about Queen Rhaenys Targaryen and her dragon now. What killed Meraxes and how? And now recall what Helaena had in her bug box in the very first scene we saw her in. If your answer is still not Scorpion, then we don't know what to say. In Game of Thrones, Euron's forces are not prepared for warfare with dragons. Due to a combination of good luck and bad writing, they managed to score a hit on Rhaegal, but are helpless against Drogon, who torches them like Jaehaerys' 100 candles. But replace Euron's silent sailors with the trained and experienced soldiers of the Triarchy, and you start to see how the beast beneath the board's prophecy might refer to Jace himself. Vermax sets many of the Triarchy's ships ablaze, and is joined by every other dragon seed as well in short order, but ends up falling because of reasons unknown. Fire and Blood tells us that it could have been a bolt to the eye or a grappling hook that snagged him, because Archmaester Gildain recalls that the dragon flew too low and crashed like a jet into the narrow sea. It is possible that Vermax was not taken on accident like Gildain believes, but struck by a scorpion risen from the bowels of a Triarchy warship. That would make the prophecy even more tragic. If Jace had been wedded to Helaena, all of this could have been potentially avoided. The scene where he dances with Helaena is a childish moment of bliss for us so far. If this prophecy were to come true, it would be a bittersweet memory, like many such moments from A Song of Ice and Fire. One thing is certain, however, this prophecy's revelation will be far less predictable and far more devastating, and that's exactly where House of the Dragon excels.
Where is Aegon?
Not here.
Marvelous verdict. Helaena Targaryen is undoubtedly one of the fan favorites of the series, and she definitely deserves more screen time. Thankfully, she is getting more appearances with every passing episode, and we think Pia Sabin will absolutely crush her character arc when it reaches its climax. She has already charmed us all with her affable portrayal of Alicent's queen-to-be. Now all that awaits us are the dreams and the madness. If you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.